Hello, I am Natalie Rowland, and this is American Soundscapes. Today, I will be discussing the Middle Eastern Music Ensemble here at William & Mary through the unique perspective of ZaiQuing, a classically trained musician from China and a freshman here at the college. What you just heard was two recordings I mixed together from ZaiQuing playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and a soundbite from the Middle Eastern Music Ensemble's rehearsal, reflecting the mixing of two completely different music styles that ZaiQuing now practices. Today I have two very special guests on my podcast, ZaiQuing, like I just mentioned, and Anne K. Rasmussen, an ethnomusicologist and the director of the Middle Eastern Music Ensemble. Okay, so hello ZaiQuing and welcome.
Hi.
Let's start with the basics. Where are you from?
In China, a city called Suzhou, and it's near Shanghai.
So how did you decide to come to William & Mary?
I think first because it's kind of cool to study abroad. We've got this long history and good studying atmosphere.
Speaking of history, let's talk about your history in being a classically trained musician. Tell me how you got into music.
I think I started learning piano when I was like 5 or 6 or something. I've been receiving like Western music education. I've been practicing classical pieces like Bach and Beethoven and Mozart.
Do a lot of kids learn music like that in China, or was it
probably not, but many people around me who play like Chinese traditional instruments, and I feel like there are already enough of them. But in China they also teach about classical music on music lessons, like in secondary school and in middle schools.
Did you hear about Middle Eastern music before? Or
No.
Hear a song?
I've never heard about it.
Never. Now let's bring in Anne Rasmussen to discuss Arab music and the Middle Eastern Music Ensemble.
You know, Arab music has a long history in the United States.
Ah yes, as you describe in your chapter in the Music of Multicultural America, the first Arab immigrants were Christians from Greater Syria seeking a new world, escaping the turmoil of the Ottoman Empire. By 1914, there were 110,000 Arabs in America. This created a community that continued to expand despite many immigration restrictions on foreigners. Arab musicians began to play to an audience that was connected not only by their place of birth, but by their journeys to the New World and the challenges they faced. This music evolved from being music parties called haflas to being made famous through the nightclub era, as Americans were intrigued about that which was foreign and exotic. So, ZaiQuing, how did you get involved in the Middle Eastern Music Ensemble?
I think some people just join by accident, and kind of wander in there.
Professor told me that I should really try this ensemble, and I just went to the rehearsal, and they gave me a daf, and I started playing somehow.
So what the rig is a daf? A daf, or a rig, is a frame drum originally Persian or Kurdish, and is the ancestor of the Western tambourine. It has a large frame covered with goatskin. It can have one or more rows of metal rings or chains, adding a jingling effect. When the daf drum is tilted forward, the rings can touch the skin to make a buzzing sound. Stabbing the fingers against the head and shaking the frame creates additional rhythms. The doom is hitting the drum in the middle, and the tuk is snapping the fingers on the outer edge. This instrument is evidently very different from a piano, which is what ZaiQuing is used to playing. How does the daf compare to the piano in your opinion, ZaiQuing?
It's much easier to play, I think, but it's also very hard to get really skilled at it.
Arab music is also very unique because it has a very interesting tuning, and each musician plays the same melodic line, yet each musician also embroiders his or her part with trills, slides, turns, enriching the sonic texture of a performance. This is called heterophony. Arab music is practiced by many without reference to books and without extensive knowledge of music theory. This was especially true in the US during the early days when musicians learned their craft without conservatories, music lessons, method books, and other pedagogical institutions. Again, this is very different from ZaiQuing's classical training, where he had a teacher and was given sheet music and focused on one piece at a time. How has learning DAF differed from learning piano, ZaiQuing?
You need to learn by observing others and also by just hearing what other people are playing and then trying to fit in with your DAF.
And that's one of the fun parts of the ensemble too, is that we decide on the arrangements together as a group.
Nice.
So I think it's a little more of a democratic.
And is that different than playing the piano too? Like, because you're just by yourself?
Yeah, piano is most likely solo, so as long as you just need to do your job really good, and that's all. But when playing with the band, it actually requires much more than just solo.
Ethnomusicologist Sarah Morelli differentiates heritage learners from affinity learners in cultural music or dance practicum. ZaiQuing is an affinity learner of Arab music as he has no cultural or generational ties to the Middle East, whereas a heritage learner would.
He's an affinity learner twice removed because he's also brand new to the United States.
Yeah. Musical affinity can be driven by anything, even an accident. America has a widespread accessibility and availability of musical styles, which allows anyone from anywhere to be attracted to musics of choice. ZaiQuing had a completely new array of music to choose from when he came to America. Affinity learners are an important component of any American ethnic or community music scene. How does being an affinity learner of Arab music lead to being an advocate of Middle Eastern culture?
It's a misunderstood part of the world, and people are either very cautious about that part of the world because they hear it's unstable and there are migrants and there's war and there's terrorism, and of course we have just a huge phenomenon of Islamophobia in the United States.
In China, people also got some sort of stigma, but people are not really so people have kind of the impression that the Arabians are terrorists or stuff like that.
And of course, through the music, we also talk about geography, and we talk about history, and we talk about people. Or you practice at music, you rehearse it, and you're really putting that culture in your body. So sometimes being in this ensemble actually helps to bring some details much closer.
Countless music and dance forms immigrated along with the people that came to this country. These practices were transplanted from elsewhere and have been adapted to some extent in American locales. This is certainly true of Arab music.
If it had resided only in the Arab American community, I don't think it would be nearly as dynamic throughout the United States as it is today.
ZaiQuing definitely adds to this dynamic, one doom tuk at a time. Music has the power to move people to different times and places, and is thus one of the most compelling agents in the definition of community and individual identity.
I consider it a chance.
Thank you, ZaiQuing, and to Professor Rasmussen for being a part of this podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome, Natalie.
Good. Yeah, all right. You're on a roll, Natalie.
Thank you. Do you like music? Do you love music? Do you enjoy it?
Yes, I do. kind of fall asleep on the Bob Dylan.
Yeah, oh, me too. Me too.